thereafter. So it was very clear to me that they were pulling together all this knowledge as like a super Stasi state, basically. So NSA was becoming the new Stasi agency, you know. That's their new term. I guess Never Say Anything is now the new Stasi agency, because even though their people are not necessarily using, they're assembling and making possible all this information and making it available to all the policing agencies of the federal government, and they in turn make it accessible to the local and state police. So it's really becoming a police state. That's exactly what East Germany was with the Stasi, and it was the primary reason why they did. That's why I left. So, I mean, that was the main reason I left, because I could see this coming. And parallel construction is the use of is how the police forces, federal, state, and local, use the NSA collected information, which fundamentally is not acquired with a warrant, and so therefore it is all inadmissible, directly inadmissible in a court of law. And so therefore, what they do is they have to, whenever they find something through the NSA data, they direct local police force to go arrest them, and then say, now you do a parallel construction by using what you would consider normal policing techniques and like requesting things with warrants and things like that, and you assemble that data, and then you use that data to substitute for the NSA data that was originally used to arrest them, and you substitute the parallel constructed data in the courtroom, which I've called perjury. They're lying to the courts, and they're subverting our entire judicial process. And that's what happens when you allow this kind of assembly of information that's so much power. It's like J. Edgar Hoover on super steroids. So this is not compatible with any form of democracy at all.
And whether it's Republican or Democratic administrations, Nixon or Obama, they all end up using the IRS, you name it, to persecute political enemies. Imagine what Hitler would have done with systems like this. These systems historically always end up getting abused. If you're just joining us, the former director of technical intelligence with the NSA, I've heard it described as one of the top 4 jobs there. So one of the heads of the NSA, William Edward Benning, is on with us right now. And I mean, a much bigger whistleblower, you could say, even though he hasn't released a lot of secret info, than Snowden. And so the media has tried to ignore him, but he's so big they can't. Without getting into anything that was classified, but we are dealing with open totalitarianism, so it's almost treason for any of us, even if something's classified, to not talk about it. I mean, what was it like to be in there? I mean, did they come in and say, okay, we're going to flip on all the switches and spy on everything now and focus on U.S. citizens and politicians? I mean, can you tell us, was there a moment or was it a process when you're there heading up, the NSA, and who comes into you? Was it the director of national intelligence? Who was it? Was it the president? Okay, we're now going to totally break the law and spy on everyone. And then you say, I'm out of here? Or how did that happen?
Actually, I was not supposed to know about this program at all, because I had told them that I was going to leave in early 2002. So I was not supposed to know about what they were doing. But the problem with that was that they had to use the programs that we had developed there that I had helped form within the SIGINT Automation Research Center, which is my laboratory at the time. So they had to use those programs, which meant they had to use the computer programmers that had developed it for me to install it in another place and get it up and running, because they were the only ones who knew how to make the code, set it up, make it running, and get data flowing in and working. So when they did that, they kept it all very secret, even inside NSA. And the reason, of course, was because it was an impeachable act. I mean, after all, spying on the U.S. citizens was a violation of the FISA laws. They were keeping the courts out of it. They only informed 4 people in Congress, the chair and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committee, one of which was Nancy Pelosi, and that's why she later on said that the impeaching George Bush is off the table, because she had agreed to these programs from the beginning. So they were keeping it very secret, even from Congress. They didn't want any opposition, because when that basically was a total information awareness program that was started in 2001.
Admiral Poindexter.
And if you remember, Admiral Poindexter came out in, I think it was 2003, advocating a TIA program, Total Information Awareness Program. And that's when everybody came down on it and terminated, and that's what Congress's reaction. So when they saw that reaction, they continued to see that they were, from their perspective, they were making the right decision by keeping it secret. It's just like their secret agreement their secret interpretation of Section 215 of the Patriot Act. The fellow who wrote the Patriot Act, Representative Sensenbrenner, has already gone publicly and said that he never intended them to be able to do what they are doing, this bulk acquisition of information by using that Patriot Act. Well, that's violating the intent of Congress, and yet they're still doing that, and they're not spelling out. They're afraid to spell out to the American people exactly what they're doing and what their interpretation is of these laws that allows them to do it. They simply are assuming that if the Congress keeps passing these laws, then that's tacit agreement with what their secret interpretation is. And they don't have the guts to come out and tell the American people out in the open what they're doing. So that's the real problem.
Well, you're right. That was a major, because I was on air at the time, when Poindexter wrote the op-ed for the New York Times called Total Information Awareness. He said, your credit card, what you eat, where you go, everything you do, when you go to school, everything will be tracked in live time or the terrorists will kill you. People went, whoa, this is 1984, and you want private companies to run this? No way. So there was a backlash. So they tried to openly sell that when it blew up in their face. You know, as you said, they just went forward with it. But the biggest thing for me here is it's come out in England, as you know, that they've got the same system, and they use it against the parliament. The bureaucracy does. I mean, this is being used. This is not to stop al-Qaeda or ISIS. This is pointed directly to American people. And now we've gone from it being secret to it being public, and then nothing's being done. I mean, where do you see this going?
Yeah, well, I see this as a very sad state of affairs. This is not the America I grew up in. I tell you, I could never understand why people would tolerate this kind of stuff. I've been advocating, if these bozos keep reinforcing by passing the same laws over and over again, that we, the people, should fire them, get them out of office because they're incompetent and they're not living up to their oath of office. We need to get rid of them. I mean, it doesn't matter, Democrat or Republican. I mean, I'm not in. The party has nothing to do with it. It has to do with whether or not you subscribe to the foundations of this country.
Well, I remember listeners sent me the link to thomas.loc.gov in 1998 and said, look at this. He was an engineer. Engineers would feed me info. I mean, I had engineers that told me they had big hubs and all the telecoms listening to everything. They would bring me diagrams. I had no idea what it meant and stick it in shredder machines because I'm no engineer, but I've been exposing this since day one, having other whistleblowers on. But I remember seeing this information and finding it so hard to believe, but reporting on it, and now it's just out in the open. And I remember being sent documents that they had done a grant for Austin to put up 1,000+ hidden microphones to listen to people. And they even had an algorithm program running locally that the feds had paid for that was NSA technology that you and others developed, I'm sure, that was keyword. And it was all there in the federal grant, just admission of microphones, key logging or word logging, whatever you call it. And I went on air and covered it, and people couldn't believe it. Then a week later, the local paper ran a big story whitewashing it, going, no, it's gunshot detector microphones. But the grant said it was microphones to listen to people. And then now this year, they announced nationwide they're putting microphones in, hidden in street sculptures. And it's in the Chicago Tribune, but they don't call it microphones. They go, the data clusters pick up wireless, environmental hazards, and listen to audio for signs of trouble. So it's just this mainlining of a 1984. Mr. Benny, as a former director of one of the major areas of the NSA, I mean, microphones hidden is 1984, is it not?
Yes, I mean, of course, it's not just the microphones with the audio and looking at video, for example, with those things, but it's also all the electronic backgrounds that goes with it. Anything you're carrying with you, like a cell phone or any kind of transaction used with any kind of document, like your credit card transactions and all those kinds of things are all assembled, and that all becomes a profile profile, basically, of you. And by the way, they keep saying, well, we don't build profiles of people. No, they don't. The software does that. I mean, once you put the data in the base, it builds relationships, and that, in fact, is the profile. So anytime they want to look at you, all they have to do is point at you and say, give me his profile, and you get it. So it's not a matter of them not having it. They have the profile on everybody. And it's not done by people. That's another word game they play. They play all kinds of word games with people. You know, it's like we don't consider anything collected unless a person looks at it. Well, that doesn't stop them from collecting everything about everybody in the country, and that's what they're doing. And they're doing it through a program called Fairview, which is the main input program they have. If you go on the web and do a Google on Fairview, and NSA, you'll get the slides that'll show you there's like 80 to 100 tap points inside the continental United States, the lower 48 states, that show where they're tapping and collecting information off the fiber optic network.
And that was being put in, from what I was told and shown by engineers and later confirmed, at the telecom hubs all over the country at taxpayer expense, whole floors and whole rooms of cable companies, of AT&T, you name it, with all the data passing through it. Just outrageous. And then Bush walking around on TV in 2006 saying, oh, we don't listen to anybody in America, and playing the word game that the computers do when they can go open your profile up and see the whole menu of everything you do laid out, what movies you see, what books you read, all your emails. Google admits they open your emails and read it. Sir, what do you make of Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Apple and all of their admissions that they are data mining and using and selling the data? I mean, it's not just the NSA.
Well, I mean, I look at that also as the same as it's not as bad as the government, because they can't come arrest you or do violent things to you. But I mean, it's still a fundamental violation of privacy rights of individuals. I mean, and that's against, I believe, the Electronic Privacy Acts, Electronic Security Acts, and all that stuff that all were existing laws to try to give privacy to people in their electronic age. So, I mean, it's fundamentally, I don't think they should be allowed or permitted to do that either.
I totally agree with you. And expanding on that, what do you make of Kate Upton and all these stars with sex tapes and naked photos that they thought it was safe to send sex videos around or naked photos on an Apple cloud? What do you make of this whole cloud revolution?
Well, it's just it's just another means of accessing more data about individuals. I mean, anybody who puts information out there should assume that it's being scarfed up by the NSA. And then made available to the FBI and DEA and other government agencies.
Are our courts fundamentally now completely bankrupt if for a decade they've been or more creating fake cases with data they stole and then they lie and perjure to the court? I mean, that sounds like most of these convictions should be overturned.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and even the Solicitor General had to lie to the Supreme Court to get the case, Amnesty International versus Clapper thrown out, and that was again challenging the issue of NSA collecting all this data without a warrant. And the Solicitor General lied to the court, saying that anybody where this data was used against them, either in a court or wherever, they would be told, and that was simply a lie. And so now they're trying to scramble to figure out what to do about that. All the past thousands of cases that they've done this way, I think they're going to write those off and say, well, that's just collateral damage. Well, that shouldn't be. I mean, it's a violation of the Constitution, the foundation of this country. If our government wants to do that, they want to violate our Constitution or change it, there's a process to do that, and they should follow that process. Create an amendment, get it past Congress, send it around to the states to ratify. I mean, that's the procedure we're supposed to do. But our government is taking a totally different, very, very ugly path.
A totalitarian revolution is really what it is. William Edward Binney is our guest. I'm going to come back and ask him about that famous statement of Clapper, the director of intelligence, to Congress saying, we don't spy on Americans, we don't collect any data. That's like saying the sun didn't come up. I mean, it's just, they're bad guys. I mean, that's what they are. They're villains. It's not being done to protect us. ExposeFacts.org. William Binney, straight ahead, your calls and more.
We're on the march. The